Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz, Shauketaly.
And a very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Newsline Live. Now then, the country is experiencing untold difficulties. Of course, we have the pandemic. The economy as a result, and also not as a result, is in a terrible shape. There are several stresses and challenges all around the country. It's not limited to any one particular group, but it is all over our wonderful island, Sri Lanka. Jobs are stressed. Opportunity as a result is stressed. Children are stuck at home and so on. That, of course, is a direct result of the pandemic. Learning online in some parts of Sri Lanka has become rather a challenge because of various issues, including connectivity and so on. And to discuss this, to discuss this and other matters, including the latest threat, which is apparently almost the final nail in the coffin of the people's expectations, is of course a threat to the freedom of speech and the right to be informed. To discuss these matters and perhaps a little bit more, we've joined this evening by Mr. Chandima Weerakkody, who is an elected representative from the Galle district. He's right here. Very good evening to you, Mr. Chandima Weerakkody.
Good evening, Faraz.
Thank you very much for being on the program. Now, my first question is, as I said, the country is besieged. It's engulfed in protests from the hills of the country to the north, to the south, to the east, to the west, in fact everywhere. Because the port city is not inhabited, so there are no protests there. But if it was, maybe we would have protests there too, being part of Sri Lanka. My question really is, on top of all these challenges that the people are facing, we now have an apparent sort of challenge to the people's right to information and to be informed. In short, a threat to the freedom of speech. As an elected representative, Mr. Weerakkody, how do you take that?
Well, right to information and the freedom of speech are inalienable rights of the citizens of Sri Lanka as per the provisions of the Constitution of Sri Lanka. And also leave aside the Constitution. Sri Lanka is the oldest democracy in this region, in Southeast Asia. Sri Lankan people are used to democratic ways, democracy, since 1931. So, undoubtedly, no Sri Lankan, I must say, will tolerate if such rights are taken away. So, no government has got a mandate to take it off the people. That we must bear in mind.
When a government has a overwhelming majority in Parliament, and it appears that all those members of that government are compliant, if you like, and when you have that scenario, do you think that the government would be misled into thinking that they can actually enter into a period of grave authoritarianism growing by the day?
I don't think, firstly, the government got the mandate to do that. And on the other hand, the Prime Minister of this country has been the longest elected member for the longest time in Sri Lanka. So he understands what democracy is, what people expect out of an elected government is. So I don't think, because if at all the government wants, with 2/3, they can go in for an amendment, but they'll have to yet go to the people for a referendum if you are to amend such provisions of the Constitution.
Yeah.
So the government, I believe, is mindful of that, and government will not go against the mandate that the people have given them.
But they did try it on in terms of the Port City Bill until the Supreme Court came in and put them right.
Well, I cannot dispute that, of course, it is not probably the government, those who did the draft.
Yeah.
It is those who did the draft wanted certain sections to be amended. But fortunately, the judiciary, Supreme Court of Sri Lanka, stood right and corrected. And the government of the day decided to follow as amended by the Supreme Court, as corrected, as determined by the Supreme Court, to bring in the amendments. So we could overcome such attempt.
If you tune into any news item, the country appears to be besieged with protests. The people simply appear not to be a happy lot. And this is not because they've got nothing else to do but to come out and sort of protest and shout, but because they are really and truly unhappy, because their daily livelihood has been threatened by a series of what appears to be ill-judged decisions.
Well, in fairness to the government, I must say, this is not a situation that Sri Lanka is facing as a country. It is not a unique situation for Sri Lanka alone. But the entire international economy is at a challenge. But at the same time, there are certain decisions that the government would have taken with the support of the people, whilst understanding how people think and how people can be affected. So probably as a result of that, people are still not happy. I, as an elected member representing the people, I know I cannot dispute the fact that the people are not happy. People are certainly not happy with the things that are happening. But it is at the same time the responsibility of the government to deliver the best possible way to see to it that the people are happy back again in this country, which is a huge challenge, because at a time like this, when their own economies are affected, when their own employment opportunity is lost, businesses have collapsed, their children's education is paralyzed. With all that, for people to take to streets is something that we had to be seriously given, something that over which we must give serious consideration.
I quite agree with you that it must be given serious consideration, because clearly the people aren't coming out on the streets and in the fields and so on for fun. They surely they have other things to do, like trying to make a living. But you know, in between all this, I am of course shocked when I read in the press as to what the government is doing, and it appears that some of these policies and their actions are muddle-headed at best. They seem to have got their priorities wrong, and I say this because whilst the primary focus of the entire country ought to be the controlling of the spread of the pandemic, and therefore the world has learnt now that the only way to control that to any degree is to have as many people as possible vaccinated, and our focus must be has to be on that and on the health sector, because the health sector is nearly operating at capacity level and so on. But in between all this, what I see and I read and I hear is about government expenditure. Surely we need to control as far as possible the flippant expenditures, sort of policies or transactions that can wait. There really is, I am appalled that there was a proposal, there is, I believe, for example, to supply 590 something portable gymnasiums. Really, do we want those things now, when our focus must be on the vaccination program and get our economy going again? And then you read about some lopsided order of 227 vehicles for parliamentarians, and they say, oh well, they'll pay for it themselves. But we don't have the foreign exchange. There are businesses that are waiting days and days before they can open an LC, and there are several challenges, and the banking system is probably at risk apart from businesses. So as an elected representative, Mr. Weerakkody, are you ashamed of what is going on at this muddle-headedness?
Well, to be frank, we find it difficult to face people at times when people pose such questions. But I must tell you, even here I have raised the concern about vaccination even over a year ago or even earlier. My independent position was also to start vaccination. We were pressurizing for that, but even at a later time, now we have started getting enough vaccine. So we will hopefully be able to give required vaccinations before the end of the year and start the economy going. I understand, because you must understand, our income, our foreign exchange that we earned through tourism has come to almost zero.
Yeah.
What we earn through foreign employment has also come down by about 75%, and we don't see foreign direct investment coming in as of now. And then the next source of foreign income was through export agriculture. Now with this issue on fertilizer, there is a challenge over that as well. So I believe personally the immediate relief could be to get tourists into the country. You can't just get them as it is. You have to get ready for that. For that, vaccination must be complete up to a certain level of international satisfaction, and then the sector must be ready. That way we will be able to bring in direct remittances, and then we must, on the other hand, encourage those who have come back from international from jobs outside Sri Lanka to go back. So in order to prepare them to go back to find employment outside, we should be able to prepare them by giving them acceptable vaccination. And then at the same time we must diversify in investment industry and try and export our products that can be exported immediately. So we must be able to go for those targets as quickly as possible.
Mr. Weerakkody, if you read the British travel advisory on travel to Sri Lanka, it is almost scathing. It is frightening to read the way they put it. And the only way one can instill confidence in international visitors to our country, surely, is if they feel safe, not only from a security point of view, but from a health perspective and so on and so forth. It is almost well acknowledged that the facilities that are available in Sri Lanka for the international visitor, either holidaying or on business, is it's not bad. It's there, and we have several very well run chains of hotels and so on, and even individuals. So that's a given. But to instill safety, as you said, we really need to get a fair number of people at least maybe 70% of the population vaccinated,
yeah.
because safety will only come from
I
that.
think as of now that is the prime target of the government, and now they are, I believe as of now they are on the correct track, and the government will reach that, achieve targets. And at the same time we must as a country strengthen our foreign relations, because most of these adverse remarks are made by various countries when the relationship is not all that good. So we have another challenge to strengthen foreign relations in order to convince their citizens to travel to our country.
That's a great point. Let's come back after this short break and discuss foreign policy relationships in terms of the problems that we're facing. It's now time to look at the headlines for the primetime news from Newsfirst later this evening at 9 o'clock. We'll see you on the other side.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz, Shauketaly.
And welcome back to Newsline Live. I'm in conversation with Mr. Chandima Weerakkody, Member of Parliament from the Galle District. Mr. Weerakkody, you touched on something very important, our relationship with other countries, foreign policy. Yeah. And as you know, we've had the most awful difficulties in securing the second dose of AstraZeneca. Just 600,000 was all that was needed. There are some people, I have read messages here, who say they've waited 5 months from the time they first got the first dose. And obviously, because of the lack of information, real information from all over the world actually, people are, needless to say, very concerned, because originally they said 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then they said, oh, well, it'll be all right in 10 or 12 weeks. And now, by the time they say July, then we're waiting for some people will be waiting for 5 months. No one is really sure about what's going on. And all this time, countries like Britain, for example, had huge surpluses of the AstraZeneca. And I'm wondering whether, if our foreign policy was on an even keel, whether Britain would have not merely ignored our requests for help and sent 600,000, which should have been absolute nothing for them in terms of the numbers they have.
Well, I think our diplomatic service is effectively engaged in securing such requirement, but at the same time, due to various opposition by various groups against Sri Lanka, who are working against Sri Lanka, it has become a challenge. So in such circumstances, I believe we have to be tactful as a country. Sri Lanka is a country that was known internationally to be an unaligned country, who had relationship, very healthy relationship with most countries. But it is damaged to a certain extent, I must understand. But at the same time, the issue about this vaccination is now resolved. Today I heard good news that we are getting enough stocks of AstraZeneca to be vaccinated as the second dose, yeah, for those who didn't get. Yeah. But the delay, of course, we must, as the government, we cannot say that there was a delay. There wasn't a delay. We cannot say that it was not due to some mishap or loophole of the government. We have to admit that. And at the same time, it is up to the government, because this government is not very old as of now. The parliament is not even 1 year. President is only close to 2 years. So there's still time for the government to develop relationship with with all the friendly countries that used to be friends, and all the countries in the world, in order to achieve Sri Lanka's development goals, which a lot of people expect. And as a result of the COVID, then due to other reasons, our economy is now in shambles. I have to agree. But we have taken the challenge, I hope, because the people have elected this government, for 5 years. Now is not the time to be changing hands. We cannot democratically change hands at a time like this. So whoever who is running the country must be now acting responsible in order to resolve these issues that the country is faced with.
But what do you say to these farmers who are very worried about what is going to happen? They're already complaining about a lack of fertilizer. Those complaints were there even before the announcement of this, the ban on chemical fertilizers, which is like an overnight decision. And these people, the farmers, are actually worried. These people are not unlike farmers in the West. These people's disposable incomes in this country, at any rate, is abysmally low.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I hope the present minister, Sashendra Rajapaksa, was appointed just a little while ago.
Yeah.
I hope he has a fair knowledge and he has fair commitment to resolve this issue, because we have to admit the fact the highest percentage of Sri Lankan individuals are farmers.
Yeah.
And if you take poverty, highest percentage of poverty is in agriculture sector.
Yeah.
So when you take decisions regarding farmers and agriculture, you must be mindful. You must take a holistic approach. When you, okay, every one of us, what is our dream, ultimate dream? To consume organic food. There is no one who opposes that. But it's a fact, when you start getting to organic cultivation, the production drops. Now, as of now, Sri Lanka is not self-sufficient in food.
Exactly.
So if the requirement is X, as of now the Sri Lankan production is Y. Once we suddenly start converting into organic, what happens is it comes further down to, say, Y.
Yeah.
Then who is going to bridge the gap? How are we going to bridge the gap? Who's going to be responsible? The government someone can say, okay, we'll give you the money. Where do you get the money? From where? Because when you start, then once the cultivation, once the productivity comes down, then as far as export agriculture is concerned, the quantities that are exported will come down. So then the income generated out of such exports, extra agriculture, export agriculture income will further drop. Then there will be another issue. So these, and how are we like? There are certainly in the world, there are advanced herbal organic fertilizer available. Have you done any research? No. And then, I mean, my argument is, first of all, what we must do is to engage in research to increase productivity. Now you go to Israel, you go to Iran, you go to developed countries, they use nanotechnology and various other technology, and the productivity of in agriculture is increased. Like if you take a mango tree in those countries or apple tree, you get more apples than leaves. But in our country, you get only
children. We get school children on the top of trees trying to get signals and do their online courses. But carry on.
We have only leaves. So, first of all, I think we have never increased our investment in research, improving productivity. And like even yesterday, like take our tomatoes. Our tomatoes cannot be used for making a sauce.
Exactly, because it's the wrong type of tomatoes to make.
So why couldn't we have done research to improve our plant, our product, to match what we import from India or wherever to prepare jams and sauces? That is not done.
Yeah.
So And preservation, we have not taken steps to prevent food waste and also to add value. Now everyone's talking about jack. Do we eat even at a time like this, where there is a food scarcity? Still in the villages, a lot of jackfruit is going waste. Why is it? Because people don't like to eat it in that raw form. But you go to a country like Malaysia, they make use of their fruits, they add value, and then the farmers have become richer. So we are, without resorting into those, if we suddenly decide to go convert our fertilizer into organic fertilizer, anyone will get panicked. Now I, as a person, as an individual who's into agriculture, I'm personally faced with difficulty. So I can understand how the other people feel as well.
I need to ask you this question, because you are not an appointed representative, you are an elected representative. So the people believed in you and returned you to Parliament to represent them. Then we talked about foreign policy and so on, and our dwindling sort of relationship with various countries where our relationship was good. But now we have a situation where some of these countries, especially those democratic loving countries, where they observe that in Sri Lanka our president has pardoned a child killer. I don't want to go on about this, but I have to mention it. Pardoned a child killer in spite of and despite this particular matter going through as guilty in every single level of court. And then they look at us and think, really, you want us to visit this country? Because certainly in the West, they pay a lot of attention to the way their children are brought up and looked after, because they are, after all, as indeed in Sri Lanka, they are the future of their country and our country too. Are you ashamed about that?
Well, certainly now Sri Lanka, I must say, is a country that had faced a lot of hardship, difficulty due to terrorism. So as a result of that, we had to go to certain extremes, even in incorporating laws in order to eradicate terrorism.
Right.
So that time our mindset worked in a different way. So as a result of that, there was some imbalance in the country, and whichever way, we have come out of it.
Yeah.
So now what I'm telling you is, whatever now the fact that we were relieved out of it must be appreciated, and whatever
there's no doubt that we appreciate that release, but my point is that there are some international and moral norms that we must stick to, and releasing child killers is not one of them.
Absolutely, what I'm telling you.
Chandima, I must stop you, because I'm very sorry, it's time for the prime time news. Thank you very much.
No, but I must tell you, by any means I don't agree with such, but at the same time I must tell you, now we have come out of such situation. We are a normal country, there is no terrorism, so we must as a nation stick to conduct which is internationally accepted.
Well said. Thank you very much, Chandima Weerakkody. That's the way it was on Newsline Live today. And it's now time to join the newsroom for the primetime news from News First. Take care, have a great evening, and as always, God bless you.